I found out my wife was cheating. What I uncovered next involved blackmail, a secret hotel suite, and a plan so calculated, it destroyed two men's lives before breakfast. Hey folks, thanks for stopping by. What I'm about to share didn't make any headlines and Oprah sure didn't do a special on it. But on February 10th of last year, right around the time when winter starts to feel like it'll never end, my life started unraveling in a way I never saw coming. It was a Saturday. I had driven down to our little town's post office. We live in one of those quiet rural spots where there's no home delivery, so you have to go fetch your mail yourself. When I got back to the house, I sat down at my desk like I usually do and started sorting through the bills. I wrote a few checks and began balancing our checkbook. That's usually something Julia, my wife, handles. She actually had just stepped out, saying she was going to give her friend Maureen a quick call and would ring me back in a few minutes. About 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. Caller ID showed it was Julia's cell. I answered with a bit of a laugh. Hey, sorry I missed your call earlier, was just in the bathroom. How are things with you and Maureen? She sounded cheerful. Things are good, she said. We're planning to go shopping tomorrow. I tried to keep it light. Just don't blow all our money while you're out there. But then her tone softened. Honestly, I just wanted to hear your voice. I miss you. That caught me off guard, but I played along. That's sweet. I miss you too. Sleep well, okay. I'll see you Sunday night. You too, she said. Good night. Now fast forward a bit, back to Saturday night. I was parked just outside a hotel, positioned where I could see both the main doors and her car clearly. I always keep a pair of binoculars in the car, long story, old habit, and they let me keep an eye out without being spotted. I got myself comfortable and set an alarm for 5:30 a.m. When it went off, I rolled the windows down so the cold morning air would help shake off the sleep and clear the fog from the windshield. I munched on some of the snacks I'd picked up the night before, craving a real cup of coffee, and sat there quietly watching that hotel entrance. More than an hour passed, just me and my thoughts. Finally, I saw something. Something that changed everything. Maybe if I'd gotten a warning call, maybe if someone had just tipped me off. Who knows? I didn't know the full truth yet. But the silence had been too loud for too long. Later, when I confronted Mike, a guy who knew more than he should have, I asked, would you want someone to call you if your wife just vanished for a night and no one could say where she was? He hesitated. I don't know, he stammered. I didn't hold back. Yeah, well, I would. And Mike, right now you've got one chance to do the right thing. Don't say a word about this to anyone. Don't mention we talked. Stay out of it. Because if you get involved, you'll be dragged right into what's coming next. Got it? Mike nodded, visibly shaken. I looked him straight in the eye and asked, now, tell me everything you know about Carl Tinker. This guy, Paul Tinker, is the type who walks into a room and expects everyone to know his name. He's got this smug confidence about him. Owns a decent-sized real estate company, and carries himself like he's the king of every space he walks into. The moment I heard his name, I could picture the type. I poured myself a glass of water and pretended to take a couple of aspirin. Julia noticed. Pete, are you okay? She asked, sounding genuinely concerned. I'm not feeling great, I said, trying to sound casual. Might be the flu. A few people at work have come down with it. She walked over, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. Maybe you should get some rest. A good night's sleep might help. I nodded. Yeah, maybe I should sleep in the guest room, just in case it's contagious. Would hate to get you sick too. She gave me a faint smile. I'll miss having you next to me, but that sounds like a smart move. She went and fixed up the guest room, fluffing pillows and pulling back the covers. Meanwhile, I stayed in the kitchen, my mind racing with thoughts I couldn't shut off. The idea of sleeping apart felt wrong, but with everything going on, maybe it was safer that way. I kicked off my shoes and lay down. At some point later that night, I heard the front door creak open. Startled, I sat up. It was Donna, Julia's close friend, carrying a small container. Donna? What are you doing here? I asked, a little confused. Julia asked me to bring you some chicken soup, she said with a soft smile. She said you needed fluids and this would help. It's good for just about anything. I appreciated the gesture, but my stomach was in knots. Thanks, Donna. I really need to hit the bathroom first though. Could you give me a minute? She nodded and I assumed she stepped out. But as I made my way to the bathroom, I realized she was still standing there in the hallway, quiet like she was watching something or waiting for someone. Then we both saw it. A well-dressed man came around the corner. Confident, composed, he had the air of someone used to giving orders, not taking them. He walked up to Julia, who had just come out of the bedroom, and escorted her outside. He gave her a quick kiss on the cheek, opened her car door like a gentleman, and waited until she pulled out of the driveway before walking to his black Lexus. I stayed hidden, heart pounding, and took down his license plate number. The next morning, after Julia left for work and I watched her park like everything was normal, I headed straight to meet the private investigator I had hired a few weeks earlier. I needed to know everything. I needed proof that my gut wasn't just spinning wild stories. When I met with the investigator, he was calm. Said he already had some photos and a few videos. I didn't even know how to feel anymore. Was it betrayal? Sadness? Rage? Or just the weight of it all finally setting in? Later that day, I stopped by a florist and sent her a bouquet. I know it sounds strange, sending flowers when your whole world's breaking apart, but I'd heard a segment on the radio about showing love, about how simple gestures could remind someone of what they mean to you. Maybe, deep down, I just wanted to remind her. Or maybe I was trying to remind myself that I still loved her, no matter how much this hurt. When she got home and saw the flowers, her face softened. "Are you upset?" she asked, almost shyly. "No," I said gently. "It's just sweet. You've never done something like that before." "Thank you." That night, she invited me to dinner at this cozy little place we used to go to when we first started dating. She stayed close to me the entire evening, more affectionate than usual, touching my arm, smiling, leaning into me. It felt like she was trying to hold on to something. Maybe she knew. Maybe she sensed I was starting to slip away emotionally. At one point, I made a light comment. Nothing confrontational, but something I knew would hit just right. Something that might stir a little guilt, maybe make her pause and think. Across the room, there was a couple that looked completely absorbed in each other. They laughed, shared bites off each other's plates. Julia noticed them too. But then they went to the restroom and didn't come back for over 10 minutes. I called out softly, letting her know I was coming in to get her. When I stepped inside, she was still sitting there, face buried in her hands, tears pouring down like a flood she couldn't stop. I didn't say much, just walked over, gently encouraged her to stand and helped her back to the car. We rode in silence most of the way. Just before we pulled into the driveway, I finally broke the quiet. "I know you're not ready to talk about everything yet," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice calm, "but tomorrow we're going to sit down. And you're going to tell me everything, the pregnancy, the decision to end it, all of it. The life you've been living behind my back. There are consequences to choices like this, Julia. Real ones." She stayed quiet, just nodding, eyes fixed on the dashboard like she couldn't bear to look at me. Later, when she was at Donna's, I overheard their conversation. Julia, her voice barely above a whisper, asked, "If Pete throws me out, would it be okay if I stayed here for a few days?" Donna didn't sugarcoat anything. "Yes, for a few days. But just so you know, I'm not looking for a roommate." "I understand," Julia replied, her voice trembling. "God, Donna. I really screwed everything up, didn't I?" Donna didn't hesitate. "Yeah, you did." "For what?" Julia said, her voice cracking. "Some thrill? A little excitement." She paused, almost ashamed of the truth spilling out. "I don't even care about Carl. Or Paul." She hesitated again. "Paul threatened me, he's a lawyer. And Maureen, she's not just a friend. She's my sister." I took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. "I'm ready to listen now," I said. "Start from the beginning. I want to hear it all, who, when, and most of all, why." Julia glanced down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. "You already know some of it, but I didn't want you to find out. I hoped you never would." "Pretend I know nothing," I told her firmly. "Start as far back as you need to. Back to when we got married." She hesitated for a long moment, then spoke, her voice barely audible. "There've only been 2 men since we got married. Paul and Carl. Carl lives out in Salinas. Paul, he's here in town. Paul came first." She closed her eyes for a second, trying to gather the words. "It started when I accidentally backed into his car in a parking lot. There was some damage and I thought that was the end of it. But he somehow got photos of us from that night, compromising ones. I don't even know how it happened. But since then he's been using them against me. Calling me. Telling me I have to come see him whenever I go to my sister's place." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice even. "Let me guess, he threatens to send the photos to me if you say no." She nodded, silent tears falling again. I clenched my jaw, trying to push down the anger. "Don't worry. I'll deal with him. Right now, I just want to understand, did you even want the baby?" "No," she whispered. "Neither Paul nor Carl was careful. A few times I missed my period and I knew something was wrong. I should have told you the moment it happened, but I was afraid. Ashamed." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was the private investigator I had hired. "I've got over 100 photos," he said, and about an hour of video footage. Do you want me to send them? I paused, an idea already forming in my mind. No, I said. I've got a better plan. I told the investigator, mail a copy of the evidence to me, but also put together a full package and send it to a different address. Julia's sister and her husband are heading down here today. They can bring it directly to me. Got it? The PI said. One more thing, I added, send a copy to Carl's wife too. I nodded quietly to myself. That part needed to happen. After that, I dialed a number I'd found through a little digging. When a woman picked up, I asked, would you be interested in seeing solid proof that your husband has been having an affair with a married woman? She didn't hesitate. Very interested. Do you know someone who has that kind of proof? I do, I said. And just to confirm, you know that Carl's law firm keeps a private suite at the Marriott Suites here in town? Yes, she replied slowly, sounding a little uneasy. Did you also know that he's been meeting someone there every Wednesday afternoon for close to a year? There was a long pause. No. What kind of proof are you talking about? I've got a video, I said. Taken this past Monday. It's all there. Her voice turned sharp. How do I get the video? You buy it, I said bluntly. I'm not trying to profit. I just need to protect myself. I need legal assurance I won't get into trouble for owning, sharing, or disclosing this kind of material. She said she understood and gave me a number for a legal contact. Someone I could call to get proper guidance and make sure I was covered. By late Sunday morning, around 11 a.m., Julia's car was back in our garage. Inside, we all sat in the living room, Julia, her sister Maureen, and me. Mike had dropped them off earlier. I could tell by Maureen's expression that she thought I'd decided to forgive Julia. That somehow the storm had passed and we were all going to sweep things under the rug. But that wasn't what was happening. Julia and Maureen were seated close together on the couch, holding hands like a united front. I stayed in the chair across from them. Julia, I said calmly, I told you before, some things are going to change. And this is one of them. They looked at me confused. I didn't leave room for misinterpretation. You and Maureen can only stay together under specific conditions, I said. And those conditions include either her living with you, somewhere else, or me being with you and her living elsewhere. You can't have both. Maureen looked stunned. Wait, you want me to leave? This isn't a debate, I said firmly. The two of you can hop in Julia's car right now and head to Salinas. Go see if Mike will let you both stay with him. Or you can agree to the terms I just gave you. Either way, a choice has to be made. Later that evening, I came into the room and saw both women sitting there with a box of tissues between them. Their faces were streaked with tears. They looked up when I entered. Julia spoke first. We accept your terms. Maureen added quietly, Mike called. He told me he's filing for divorce on Monday. He gave me until the end of the month to collect my things from his house. Mike doesn't pull his punches, I said flatly. Did he say anything else? She nodded, eyes red and tired. He said we'd both rot in hell for what we've been doing. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know Mike was the religious type. I never took Mike to be a church-going man. He never talked about religion much, and I can't remember him ever stepping foot in a chapel. So hearing him say something like that, about rotting in hell, it just hit different. Maureen, I said quietly, just so you know, all this time you kept secrets from your husband. Big ones. She didn't say anything, just looked down. Julia wanted to reconnect physically not long after the dust started to settle. But I held back. I told her it was because I was still worried about her health. She had just gone through a medical procedure and I didn't want to risk anything if she wasn't fully recovered. That was part of the reason, sure. But truthfully, my heart wasn't in it. Not anymore. Thursday night came and we were trying to lay low. Just the three of us at home, half watching TV, pretending like we could act normal. Then came a knock at the front door. I got up to answer it. A man stood there with a neutral expression. Is Maureen Connor here? He asked. Maureen heard her name and walked over. I'm Maureen Connor, she said cautiously. The man handed her an envelope. You've been served, he said simply, and then turned on his heel and walked off. Everything was in motion now. The next day, the conference room was filled with lawyers and reporters. When they started filing in, one of them asked where Paul was. I kept my answer simple. I don't even know the guy personally. I'm just here to show the video. At exactly 11 a.m., I reached into my pocket and pressed a button on the small remote I'd brought. A screen flickered to life, and the room went dead silent as the footage began playing. 15 people watched in disbelief as Paul and Julia walked into a hotel room together. You could hear him clearly. He made some incriminating comments that sealed his fate. The room tensed. Paul, who had shown up late, suddenly stood up. "I've only got 9 minutes before I have to be back in court," he blurted, fumbling to grab his things. But it was already too late. Word traveled fast. Paul Tinker was now facing formal charges for blackmail. Channel 7 picked up the story and aired footage naming the law firm he worked for. Within days it hit the headlines. I later found out that Mrs. Tinker filed for divorce. She didn't hold back either. She told him that if he fought her on any point, alimony, assets, custody, she'd make the DVD public. That was all it took. He lost everything. His family. His house. 3/4 of his business. And just to twist the knife, the court ruled that if his firm ever made less than $20,000 a month, he would have to personally cover the difference. As the three of us, Julia, Morin, and I, watched the story unfold on the evening news, I got up and walked into the other room. I came back holding an envelope. I handed it to Julia. "This is the $11,000 you're owed from the divorce," I said calmly. "Inside is also a copy of the final decree. And the keys to your new place." She looked stunned, unsure whether to cry or speak. I turned to both of them. "We're done," I said. My voice was steady. "You lied to me, Julia. Carl wasn't blackmailing you. That was your choice. And Morin, you lied too. You're the one who introduced Carl to Julia in the first place. You both made your bets, you're the ones who'll have to live in them." They both started arguing, words flying at me all at once. I didn't stay to listen. I walked out, got in my car, backed slowly out of the driveway and didn't look back. I can only imagine how much more furious they must have been when they finally got those bandages off their backs, and saw they'd been marked, literally. It was a bold message, one they wouldn't forget. Every few months, my buddies and I gather for what we jokingly call Peace of Mind Fridays. It's nothing too wild, just a get-together at a local restaurant or bar. The idea is simple. We hang out, unwind, and then our wives come pick us up. That way nobody has to worry and everyone knows where we are. There's always at least one designated driver, and drinking is totally optional. It's more about the company than anything else. A few months back, a brand new hotel opened downtown. Fancy place. So, for our quarterly gathering, we decided to try out the bar at the new hotel. It was something different and we figured, why not? My name's Gary Brown. I was born and raised here. After college, I came back home with my girlfriend, Kathy. She and I had met during our sophomore year and stuck together all through graduation. Kathy was beautiful, strong-willed, and incredibly focused on her career and image. But early on, we hit a wall when it came to having kids. She flat out told me she didn't want children. Said pregnancy would ruin her body, and she wasn't about to sacrifice her figure for anyone, not even me. I tried to reason with her, talk about the life we could build with a family. But she stood firm. "Your parents will have grandkids from your sister," she said. "And my brother in Sacramento has kids. That's enough, Gary. We don't need to add to the crowd." It hurt, not gonna lie. I'd always imagined being a dad someday. But after a lot of back and forth, I let it go. We stayed together. And instead of raising children, I bought a Harley Davidson, one of the really nice ones, and we started taking long rides across the state. Just the two of us in the open road. That became our version of freedom. Now back to the hotel bar. That night something was off. Charles was there. You know the type, slick, always in a nice suit, talks like he's better than the room. He had someone with him, a woman none of us recognized. And something in the way he acted didn't sit right. Tim, one of our group, former military, sharp as a tack, quietly pulled us aside. He had a plan. Said Edward and I would excuse ourselves to the restroom, and once we returned, Drake would begin walking toward Charles. Then the four of us would close in around him. No threats. No drama. Just a direct conversation. Everyone agreed. We put the plan in motion. When we surrounded Charles and his companion, I spoke first. Calm and steady. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to have an honest exchange." Charles looked genuinely confused. "Do I know you?" "No," I said. "But we know enough." Growing up, my younger brother was the opposite of me. He turned out to be a regular guy, hardworking, dependable. He idolized our stepfather and became the family man Dad always hoped one of us would be. He's got 3 kids now, and I like those little ones, my 2 nieces and nephew. I visit when I can. I ended up more like our biological father, charming, restless, and not exactly built for the picket fence life. My womanizing streak didn't really kick in until after college. I graduated with a degree in business administration, but I was never top of the class. Just an average student with a tendency to date more than I probably should have. But none of that really mattered at that moment, standing in front of Charles. What mattered was the truth, and finally dragging it out into the open. I've had my share of disappointments over the years, but I've also caused pain, real heartache, for at least one woman who truly cared for me. Looking back, I'd say I was pretty average when it came to relationships. Not a saint, not a villain, just a guy trying to find his way, sometimes failing more than succeeding. I once joked that supermarkets were made by men, while shopping malls were made by women. Supermarkets are about getting in, grabbing what you need, and getting out, efficient and direct. Malls? That's a different game. Window shopping, wandering around, savoring the experience. It felt like a metaphor for relationships, honestly. And that night at the mall, surrounded by a sea of women, I couldn't help but reflect on that. Over the years, my home turned into something of a social hub. A place where people came by often, and I always tried to be welcoming, cracking jokes, being easy to talk to. I wasn't chasing flings just to feel young. I was meeting women, some younger, many older, who had something to say, something in common with me. I connected best with those who had stories behind their eyes. Then came a moment I didn't see coming. I was introduced to a man named Gary Brown. The name hit me like a jolt, Kathy's ex-husband. And for a second I felt something close to fear. I didn't know how he'd react. I braced myself. But Gary, he didn't come in swinging. He was calm, composed. "All I want is an honest conversation," he said. So we had one. He asked me straight out about my relationship with Kathy. I didn't dodge. I told him everything he asked. When he wanted to know if I'd been her first after their split, I told him no, I was her third. And after hearing all that, Gary did something I didn't expect. He looked me in the eye and said, "I don't hate you. Truth is, she was already unfaithful long before you came into the picture." His honesty was disarming. I found myself sitting up straighter, actually taking in what he was saying. This wasn't a man looking for revenge. He was trying to find his footing in a mess that had taken years to build. Then Edward, always the strategic one, put a hand on my shoulder and looked at Gary. "Do you want a quick divorce?" he asked. "One that splits everything down the middle? Or are you willing to wait, maybe 6 to 9 months? We could help you build a case and negotiate something better than 50-50ths. Drake chimed in, "The real question is, how can we make that time livable for you? 6 to 8 more months of sharing space with someone who betrayed you, that's no small thing." Edward nodded. "We're not talking about anything underhanded. Just smart strategy, patience and planning. With the right moves, we can shift the odds in your favor." What followed was one of the most unexpected brainstorming sessions I'd ever been a part of. We tossed around all kinds of ideas. Some were flat out wild and got discarded immediately. But Edward, drawing on his years of life experience, had a way of keeping us grounded. He helped filter out the noise so we could focus on the things that actually made sense. And slowly we started to shape a plan that didn't just feel like revenge, it felt like reclaiming control. The strategies we came up with, and actually pulled off, were more effective than I ever imagined. It started with Drake's idea, which was pretty clever. He suggested we compress our regular poker nights, scheduling more of them in a short span. That way I could lose a little more money than usual, and my friends could quietly hold on to it for me. Think of it as an unofficial safety net, tucked away for the storm we all knew was coming. Next, I had to make a lot of personal changes. Little things like replacing my old electric shaver, updating my wardrobe. My shirts had started showing their age. Small upgrades, but they mattered. I was preparing, even if on the surface everything still looked normal. But the best idea? That one came from Tim. Tim introduced us to something he called the thick pencil trick. It sounded odd at first, but then he explained. He knew a guy, owned a construction company, who'd gone through a brutal divorce. This guy once overheard a clever way to legally tip the scales in a divorce settlement. It had to do with renovations. You see, Kathy and I had bought an older house a while back, one that definitely needed work. This construction guy stepped in with a deal. He'd double the price on small renovations, things like replacing tile, minor plumbing, cosmetic repairs. I'd pay the full price and cover the taxes, but the extra funds would get funneled back to me quietly under the radar. A kind of financial backchannel. Legal? Maybe. Smart? Definitely. Meanwhile, Edward took charge of some of the heavier lifting. He had one of his employees scope out the mall, walking back and forth, discreetly observing. It didn't take long for us to narrow down our target, a guy living on the top floor. His name was Charles Miller. We got pictures, even video. We thought we had our man. But then, during the Miller investigation, Edward had another one of his people tail Kathy. That's when the Real bomb dropped. Turns out, Charles wasn't the only one. Edward's guy came back with brand new footage, clear, damning evidence of another man entirely. More photos. More video. Different dates. Different places. And just like that, it became obvious. Kathy wasn't just unfaithful. She was a serial cheater. Edward sat me down and said, "You need to understand something. This isn't about one mistake. Kathy's pattern makes it clear. She was never going to stop." That was all I needed to hear. I reached out to the best divorce lawyer in town, the one Edward had recommended. The first thing he told me was to quietly open a new bank account. So I did. Then came the rest, shifting assets, canceling shared subscriptions, changing passwords. I even found a small apartment on the other side of town. Tim covered 6 months' rent using the poker money we'd stashed earlier. That apartment became my safe haven, my backup life, completely hidden from Kathy. When the divorce papers were finally ready, I made sure they were served on a Friday. I told Kathy I had to take a business trip to a nearby city that day. The truth? I took Thursday off, spent the day moving essentials into my new place, and waited for the moment everything would finally be out in the open. Thankfully, Kathy and I had no children. That would have complicated everything. With no custody battles or child support in play, my lawyer said we could finalize the divorce in just 3 months, so long as she didn't contest anything. He looked me in the eye and said, "Marriage counseling is a waste of time and money in your case. Don't bother. What you need is a solid attorney." And I believed him. I left the note on the biggest table in the living room, right next to my wedding ring. I kept it short and clear. "I intend to divorce you. Please don't call me. We can handle everything through our lawyers. Your soon-to-be ex-husband." After placing the letter, I looked around the house one last time, then walked out the door, leaving behind the life I thought we were building together, and the memories now tainted by her betrayal. I knew she'd eventually realize I knew about Brian Wheeler, her latest affair. But I didn't want a fight or a scene. I just wanted out. Later, when the official divorce documents were delivered to her, she called in tears. Not to plead or beg, but to say, "Do you know what it felt like coming home and finding that letter on the table? Just like that, you were gone. No warning, no emotion, just a cold goodbye." She sobbed for several minutes, but I stayed quiet. I didn't interrupt. Honestly, I felt a strange sense of peace. Like the weight I'd been carrying had finally been lifted. Letting her cry was probably the kindest thing I could do. Through it all, my friends were there for me. Not just during the easy parts, but when life was falling apart. Real friends. The kind who don't vanish when things get hard. They supported me in ways that went far beyond emotional encouragement. They helped protect my savings, kept everything confidential from their families, and made sure I had options when I felt cornered. I owe the most to Edward. He's the one who found that video of Charles bragging, solid proof that changed everything. I can never thank him enough. To me, a cheating spouse isn't just someone who broke a promise. They're a thief. They steal time, trust, and years you'll never get back. It's more than betrayal, it's a robbery of the life you were building together. In the months that followed, I began rebuilding. One evening, I came across an online ad that caught my eye. Different from the usual fluff about hobbies and vague traits like affectionate or good listener. This one stood out. It was a simple profile of a 32-year-old woman who wrote, "I want to start a family." That line hit me like a wave. Kathy never wanted kids. She made it clear early on, and I had buried that dream for years. But now, here was someone who shared a hope I thought I'd lost. She lived in a neighboring state, so I responded with a letter, included a photo, and explained that I was divorced, ready to move on, and open to starting a real family. We began exchanging messages and quickly found common ground. We had both been through heartbreak. We both wanted the same future. A week later, we met in her city. We didn't rush anything, took things slow, careful, and honest. Not long after, she came to visit me in my hometown. And you know what? It felt right. Easy. Like for the first time in a long while, I was standing on solid ground again, with someone who didn't want to rewrite my life but wanted to build something new with me. We decided not to waste time. Life had already shown us how fragile it could be, and neither of us wanted to wait for perfect timing that might never come. So we made plans to get married. Edward stood by my side as my best man. When I looked over at him during the ceremony, he gave me that familiar knowing smile, the kind that said, "You made it." His second wife was expecting their third child, and he leaned in before the vows and whispered, half joking, "You're next, man." After the wedding, we spent our honeymoon in Florida, just the two of us soaking up the sun and each other's company, feeling like life was finally back on our side. Back home, word eventually spread about what happened to Kathy. After we divorced, she ended up with someone new, a man with a dark background. He turned out to be involved in drug trafficking, and one day it caught up with them. A violent argument broke out between him and his associates over money. The result was fatal. Kathy's boyfriend and her second husband were both gunned down. Kathy survived, but just barely. She went through a long and difficult surgery in the local hospital. The police moved quickly. There was a shootout with the gang and 2 suspects were taken down. One of them didn't make it. I remember hearing about it and feeling nothing really, not joy, not pain. Just a quiet acceptance that some people choose roads that end in darkness. That was 7 years ago. Recently, I ran into Charles again. He stood up when he saw me, extended his hand, and we shook. There was no tension between us anymore, just mutual understanding. Gary was with me that night, and I'll never forget the moment he smiled and said, "I really meant it when I thanked you." That video, it was the moment of truth. It helped me see who my ex-wife truly was. And it gave me the freedom to find someone better. He paused, then added, "Now I've got 2 kids. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually happy." One of his friends chimed in then. "After my divorce, I lived alone for a couple of years," he said. "Spent a lot of nights browsing online. That's when I found a whole collection of videos about cheating spouses. Some of them were rough to watch, but it reminded me I wasn't alone." He added something practical too. "Just so you know, the family law in the neighboring state says if a child is under 4 and the ex-husband isn't the biological father, he's not required to pay child support. Not that it applies to you, you're definitely the dad, but just worth knowing." We eventually said our goodbyes and returned to our tables. I felt lighter, like a weight I hadn't even realized I was still carrying had finally lifted. My business partner and I left the hotel bar not long after. We went our separate ways into the night and I drove home. Alone but not lonely. And for the first time in years I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be.